Hey everybody, welcome to the Cosmic Dispatch. I'm your host, Cory, and with me today I have Camille Michelle Gray, an astrologer, among many other things. And we're talking eclipse season, which is, you know, taking up pretty much all of Aries season. We recently had our vernal equinox on the 19th. Today, we're recording this on March 23rd, 2024. It's 12:17 p.m. and both Camille and I are on the East Coast. So for those of you who tune in intermittently, this used to be a weekly radio show, and now it is not. I'm leaning towards doing this monthly, or as the big transits happen, or big astrological events happen. And let me tell you, this eclipse season is really big. It's
Yeah.
it's packed, it's deep, it's edgy. And I really wanted to speak with someone about it's very complex as well. So there's a lot in here that Camille and I have to pull from. So we're going to be talking about that today. A little housekeeping as I'm in this transitional phase for whatever the cosmic dispatch is going to be next. Um, if you like this content, please follow us. Please hit the like button if you like what you're hearing, and you can also contact us with ideas for shows, guests that you would like to see, topics you would like us to discuss. And you can email us at thecosmicdispatch@gmail.com. And our infamous keeper of the questions, Mandy Sheeler, will be on the other end to answer any questions you have, but also receive your questions. We did have a few questions come in about this eclipse season that I hope we get to. I think we should be able to get to. And as far as consultations on my end, I'm pretty booked, but I am booking now for May. And yeah, that's all I can think of at the moment, as far as housekeeping. And so, yeah, I kind of want to jump into this. I want to hear what Camille has to say. And I'm going to let Camille introduce herself right now.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, hello, listeners and watchers. My name is Camille Michelle Gray. I'm an astrologer out of the DC area, and I've been practicing for about 6 years. Um, you can go to my website. I have a whole bunch of writings there. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. I'm sure that'll be in the show notes. But yeah, I'm really, really excited to talk about these eclipses and this very rocky period of new beginnings is kind of like the theme of what I've been feeling into with these next couple of weeks. Yeah, and I'm really, really excited to be here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Camille. I have a stellium in Aries, and I'm already feeling this stuff. I had a really rough Pisces season, actually,
Yeah.
too. Pisces season kind of hurt my heart. It was like really heavy. And as I guess maybe luck would have it, I felt a very palpable shift once the sun moved into Aries, and it was a little
Mm.
bit like something lifted. So I'm happy for that. But yeah, this set of eclipses coming up is something else. Um, and so we are in Aries season now. So happy, happy astrological new year, happy spring.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Aries season in general?
I I love Aries season because, I mean, where I am kind of on the northern hemisphere, and you can probably relate, although today the weather is kind of iffy, but it's like the start of spring and the bird song and the flowers, and I just love that as, co-present the sign of starting things and kind of breaking through the surface and not really quite knowing what's going to be beyond that, but just daring to break out anyway. Um, and Aries is my 11th house. And so I often find, as is happening now, that it ends up being very community oriented for me. So it ends up being a period where I feel more connected to the folks in my community and to the goals that I have for myself. So I tend to like it, especially after this specific Pisces season, which is also incredibly heavy for me as well. And it feels just like a breath of fresh air. That's always what Aries feels like for me. What about you? I know it's your
Um,
birthday soon, so you're coming up on an actual new year.
yeah. And I, of course, I try not to look too far ahead, especially when I'm going to make up a term here, when I'm like doom astrologizing.
Yeah.
But I'm noticing that the eclipses, especially the Aries Libra eclipses, as we move on into 2025, are all hovering around all of my Aries stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm like excited and um, oh no, because it's not just like these eclipses aren't just happening during a time when there's a there's more of an overall stability going on in the world where we could maybe even be
Mhm.
more excited about um, things being a little spicy or tumultuous.
Yeah.
We have the environment that we're in, which is tumultuous, which is incredibly unstable. And
Yeah.
so to kind of see these eclipses coming in saying, guess what? We're going to turn up the volume on that. It's like,
Yeah.
yay.
Supercharged.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well what's that going to be about? And
Mm,
so I'm excited and also I got some Taurus things going on and I think you do too. Like this
I
summer
do.
Uranus is going to hit my Venus. My Venus is conjunct my midheaven. So I'm like, what's that with the eclipses? Like,
Yeah.
again, exciting, but a little anxiety producing. Uh, so,
Absolutely.
yeah, that vernal equinox. We're going to be talking more about Aries in general, just because that's what's on the menu.
Yeah.
So that the Aries ingress, the sun ingressed into Aries, March 19th. And then just yesterday, and this is really important, Mars, which is the ruler of Aries, entered Pisces.
Mm.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about this, and this is important because especially that big Great American eclipse on April 8th, um,
Yep.
that's going to be ruled by Mars in Pisces. That's a little funky, I think.
Yeah.
um, and so, like, let's talk a little bit about Mars in Pisces because this will be coming up again. Any thoughts, feelings, attitudes about Mars
Yeah,
in
my first
Pisces?
feeling is that, Mars is an uncomfortable player in Pisces. Like the attributes of Mars mixed with Pisces, of course, there can be a beautiful alchemy. But in this heightened moment of like chaos and a lot of movement, as you said, it just really feels like confusion to me and a lot of like haphazard motion, at least as we're speaking like on a global scale. Now, there is kind of this entry point with Mars and Pisces to be able to access like softness and gentleness and compassion if you're already kind of like spiritually inclined to do those things. But yeah, it's kind of like with every mutable sign, there's an incredible, it's just a mixed bag. You're not quite sure how it's going to turn out or what direction it's going to go in. It's just this highly mutable place full of possibilities, and some of those possibilities may not be comfortable, right, for us to kind of deal with. Yeah, so I see. Mars and Pisces kind of in the background of this Aries season, right? In the kind of symbolic 12th house. And it feels like the stuff that we're trying to start or the beginnings that we're trying to see are still kind of subject to this behind the scenes rearranging that's not
Mm.
quite finished for us yet. So that's kind of how I've been leaning into it. And it's in my 10th house. And so what does it mean to be loud and angular, but also deeply confused, right? So that just feels like the kind of theme that we're just in for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, same. I have some similar thoughts.
Yeah.
It's like, do we really want to be like full of all this energy and like just needing to do something, wanting to act, wanting to do something, and be completely confused or half
Yeah.
informed or half in the dark? Mars likes to go from point A to point B. Like, let's have
Yeah.
something direct, something clear, like a clear objective. And Pisces, it's the ocean. It's like, and so it's kind of like this wayward energy that you can get really inspired to
Yeah.
do something, but like it's I'm, well, this is a maybe a horrible analogy or example. Like when you're washing dishes, and some of us have that little like it's like a gun, and you can either
Yeah.
get like a really sharp stream of water, or you can get something like a spray. And I
Yeah.
kind of
A
think
sputter.
of
Yeah.
Mars and Pisces. It's you're getting the spray, and
Yeah.
not all the water is going to a particular place. It's kind of going all over the place. And yeah, that makes me a little uncomfortable. Um, I I had some thoughts this morning that I just jot down, and if you want to if any of these inspire some other thoughts about Mars and Pisces, I would love to hear them. But I have
Mm.
some keywords, key phrases: the escape artist, the
Mm.
hidden or the passive aggressive attack. I
Yeah.
think of the martial artist, specifically Bruce Lee, who practiced Jeet
Hmm.
Kune Do, which, like, he didn't directly attack, but that method of martial arts, he lets the opponent's movements and attacks, he works with their energy and kind of like use the word
Response.
alchemy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And turns it
Isn't his
into,
like one of his phrases is like be like water, I think? Like
yeah,
be malleable like water. Yeah.
be water, my
Be
friend.
water. Yeah.
And how that can be actually a very martial thing.
Hmm.
Um, I think of a hero who advocates for the vulnerable. I have here liquid violence. um, I have so last weekend I was away teaching at a retreat, and they had a bunch of like old school 1970s games, and one of them was Battleship, which I'd actually never played before, even though that's my era. And and the way you play it, for those of you who don't know what this is you have an opponent across from you, and you have to try to figure out, by like just trying to figure out where things are by question and answer, so you get an
Hmm.
idea of where their submarines and everything, where they're
Yeah.
at. And then, and this is how you end up like trying to sink someone's battleship, how you attack them, but you're kind of in the dark trying to like
Yeah.
figure out where things are. um what else? And then Mars in Jupiter's house, I think of,
Mm.
grandiosity and faith that luck or the gods are on your side, and that you're supported, so you can just go out there and do whatever. um yeah, whatever it is you're inspired to do. And what else? One last thing: acting from inspiration, and also
Yeah.
acting from fear. Because when we're dealing with Pisces, um, the inspiration or the fear that we experience, these are not tangible things. They're not quote unquote real, but they can
Yeah.
motivate action. And then next thing you know, you're acting based on something, again, that may or may not be true or real. And
Yep.
then I think of last thing is what it means to be viral. Like like
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
got like literally all kinds of little germs and things in the air right now that we can't see, and they're pervasive. They're everywhere. But there's also thoughts, like thought memes and
Mhm.
stories that are going around that are just kind of everywhere, and that if you don't take them for, oh, that's like a particular virus, that's a particular meme, we could just mistake it for, well, that's, isn't that just true, isn't that just the way things are? So I'm
Right.
thinking of the
Yeah.
viral. But yeah, I mean, there's more, but I don't know. Did any of those spark anything for you?
The Battleship sparked something for me because I actually recently played Battleship, and maybe this is a little bit of a reveal about me, but sometimes, and I've played with people sometimes who will move the ships. And so I'll be like, is there a ship here? And they're like, nope, because they moved it. And it reminds me of Mars and Pisces because there can again be this evasive quality or this kind of, as you said, escape artist quality. And Pisces and Mars and Pisces is so good at shape shifting, becoming who and what it needs to be for the moment, right? To get what it needs out of the moment. And in the battleship analogy, like what I needed in that moment was to win. So I was gonna like move and maybe cheat and like, be slippery with where exactly my battleships were. Um, and especially what you said about moving on a dream or moving, with these Jupiterian ideals. We usually think of Sagittarius as a sign of conviction, but Pisces just as readily can be a type of energy that is so invested in a dream or an ideal or a vision that it will pull out the stops, right, in order to see that come true or in order to convince other people of this vision. It reminds me of like a cult leader who's like, this is the way, I'm very charismatic, there's this utopia that's waiting for us if we all go. And of course, the fallout and the consequence from those kinds of behaviors. And then, especially in global politics, Mars and Pisces is tricky and scary for me because what happens when people are moving on these illusions or dreams or feelings of grandeur, and then the Aries version of it is like making it like pop or making it explode or making it kind of boom. So it reminds me maybe even sometimes of like acts of violence that are done in accordance with a dream or a religion or a belief. And even how like Jupiter is in Taurus affecting like material realities, right? And how those dreams and moving on those dreams or moving on those illusions, as you said, even though they're in this cerebral spiritual space, have real world tangible consequences, right? Moving forward. So those are the things that kind of came to mind there. It's like Mars and Pisces is such a slippery energy and it can be cultivated for so much good, but it can also be cultivated for like so much bad. And we can't see or maybe intuit what it's going to be, or it can be both at the same time, right? It's just like a lot, a lot of
Mm,
contradictory energy.
well, yeah, so Mars moved into Pisces yesterday. And I believe it
Yeah.
was yesterday. I think the big headline that I saw, even though I didn't look further into this, there was a huge attack in Moscow
Yes.
that
Yes. Yeah. That's what I was thinking of.
yeah, that has
Yeah.
ties to ISIS,
Yeah.
allegedly. And so, yeah, that, and my ex-boyfriend had Mars in Pisces. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, so this is the ruler of that solar eclipse that we're
Yep.
having in April, and it's ruling the sun's tenure in
Hmm.
Aries for the whole season.
Yep.
So something to consider when when you're feeling like you're feeling that breath of fresh air, that new life, like, yeah, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to act. It's like, just if you can, take a pause.
Yeah.
What is motivating this?
Yeah. And
Um,
Aries isn't an energy that is normally, I won't say good at, but their purpose here is to just start without really knowing the outcome. And when you just start and you just do, and you have like Mars and Pisces ruling it, it's like it could just be a lot of like sloppiness. And so the nature of Aries is to move quickly. And so there's this dissonance that we have where it's like you may want to move slowly or with forethought or with caution because you're not quite sure how those things are going to play out, I think, until Mars actually enters Aries and becomes more obvious.
oh man. Um, yeah. So we have Mars and Pisces for about 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a rough one for me. I don't like I have my sun in Mercury and some other stuff in Aries. And I just want to get going.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling I don't like the feeling of being indecisive. I don't like the feeling of being ambivalent. It's like, oh well, there's this and
Yeah.
it like then because I can't then do my Aries directive, which is to just get it going. Just do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, and so that's been very aggravating. Um, and then we have, and this is just in a couple of days, the like our first eclipse during Aries
Mhm.
season. It's a penumbral lunar eclipse in Aries in Libra at 5 degrees and change, and that happens on March 25th.
Mhm.
And before I say anything about this one, I'm wondering if you already have some stuff going for this this Libra lunar eclipse.
Yeah, I wrote down some things that I think the Libra Aries axis is about, like in general, but also what may be kind of hastening or what may be kind of activated during these eclipses, like the themes. So I put here checking our addiction to approval,
Oof,
checking our addiction to
oof.
passivity as well, burning down smothering bonds or relationships, um, assertion over deference, right? So Libra can be like, I don't know, what do you think? With Mars and Pisces, there's probably a lot of that, like, I don't know, what do you think? Um, Finding the audacity in whatever house Aries is for you, right? So, like, having a sense of fearlessness wherever that is, ditching chronic politeness politicking, which is Libra, and then also freedom, right? The right to just be, the right to just do it, the right to just kind of show up. And I think for people who haven't been living in those kinds of truths, with the North Node having been in Aries for a while, it's going to be a kind of a shake-up or a wake-up call around the dates of this eclipse having to do with those subjects. Where have you been bold, or where have you been, overly reliant or small, or, afraid to break out? You may be kind of pushed out onto the stage. And that can be deeply uncomfortable, but it's sometimes the push that people need in order to get going or to like leave a situation that's not great.
Ooh, yeah. I'm so before we keep going with this lunar eclipse in Libra, just like we were talking about, Mars in Pisces is ruling that solar eclipse. We
Yeah.
have Venus in Pisces right now as well, and
Yep.
Saturn in Pisces. And Venus in Pisces is ruling this lunar eclipse. So both
Yes.
of these eclipses have have this kind of like miasma, this like kind of haze of
Yes. Yeah.
intuitions and feelings, and it's like Aries and Libra are cardinal signs. Like even when Libra is being doing their taking a long time to decide something because they're trying to orchestrate something or figure out all the
Yeah.
elements, it is with the intention of taking action and getting something done. So Aries and Libra are
Absolutely.
both wanting to do, and there's all this Pisces. Here's all the Pisces. Um, and I'm of two minds about, you know, I don't like to say things are, oh, this is a good transit, this is a bad transit. but I'm of two
Yeah.
minds of how this first lunar eclipse is might be kind of easy or beneficial, and also an equal amount of arguments of why
Yeah.
this might be really incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
And in the oh, this might be, kind of a okay eclipse for some people, it's because it is ruled by Venus and Pisces. We have Venus in her exaltation. She's
Yeah.
making contact with Jupiter. Those are some really nice things.
That's really nice. Yeah.
But and the way eclipses work, so this is like a turning point in
Mm.
in the story um of the Aries Libra eclipses. And the last Libra eclipse we had in October was quite heinous. And in
Mm.
that eclipse, in that Libra eclipse, when was that? I think it was like October 14th. um
Oof.
we had we had stuff going on with Eris, the goddess of discord. That's a dwarf planet. Pluto was brought
Mm.
into the mix, and Mars in Libra was
Mm.
there as well. Um, and we're also, because it's a lunar eclipse, this one. But because it's Libra, we're always going to be dealing with the south node of Libra, which is really important. So when we have the south node present, we might be looking at things that are not working,
Yeah.
patterns that we don't want to continue, um, things that are like way past their sell by date. And when
Yes.
things
Yeah.
don't work anymore, and you keep trying to breathe life into them, you will, at best get diminishing returns, but
Mm.
at worst, you're going to get a lot of what I guess a lot of like psychological astrologers would call like the shadow elements of that
Yeah.
sign.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's where I'm like, in one respect, this eclipse has some nice things going on. And if we're continuing the story from the last eclipse, that makes me a little like, oh, this could be
Yeah.
really rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so I have again some keywords, key phrases. um, with this South Node Libra eclipse, I'm thinking of things like fake peace or fantasy peace. Because, like, Venus and Pisces, the problem with Venus and Pisces sometimes is they project their wildest dreams and fantasies on another person or a situation, or they project their wildest, fears or nightmares. It's like this like apex of euphoria and like the depths of despair with Venus and Pisces, or I think
Yeah.
maybe anything in Pisces. And so, and I kind of am seeing this around me a bit as well, where there's a lot of rough stuff going on right now, and a lot of people are, very sensitive to these things. Pisces is incredibly sensitive. A lot of what's going on in the
Mm.
world right now might seem really harsh, and it is. And so it could be really easy to make like it's not so bad if we, look
Mm.
at it this way. And I think things are going to get better because we have a lot of agreements in place and contracts in place. And so if we just stick to that, maybe, you know everything will, I don't know, get smoothed over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is where, so, Saturn has its exaltation in Libra. And this is,
Yeah.
I think, kind of a shadow Libra thing, where Libra feels like if we just follow the rules and we
Mm.
go through the proper channels to,
Yeah.
create, peace, which it doesn't always mean that things have equilibrium or that there's justice involved. And I think
Yeah.
deep down, Libra really does want equilibrium and justice. But when things get this harsh and this painful, there might be a settling for it's fine. We can just like negotiate the shit out of this, and it will be fine. Let's try not to ruffle each other's feathers or make it harder than it
Yeah.
is. But
Yeah.
also having that not be the truth of a situation,
Totally. Totally.
something like that.
Yeah, that
What
makes me think of you know, you're talking about like, everything will be okay vibes, but then there's actually, maybe things won't be okay. And it made me think of like the totally not the opposite, but like taking that very far, where I think sometimes Pisces and Libra, or Pisces specifically, can just be inactive, or it can bury its head in the sand, or it can choose to be like, I'm just not going to look at this because it doesn't fit my feel good vibes. It doesn't fit my, the world that I want to live in. And so all this stuff in Pisces and spiritual bypassing and just being like,
mm-hmm.
oh, it's going to be fine. Or, don't look too much at the negative stuff, all that stuff. But I think we do need to face harsh realities, and we do need to get into the difficulty of things in order to like feel it and to fix it. And when I think about the sextile to Jupiter, which in a lot of ways can just be, again, like supporting that belief of spiritual bypassing, or just like supporting this energy of like, it'll take care of itself. That's totally one of the manifestations of this eclipse. What are the consequences of ignoring? What are the consequences of not looking? What are the consequences of just, deciding I'm not going to be an active participant in this because it's too painful, right? So yeah, that brought up a lot of, especially with Mars and Pisces, that's spiritually bypassing. Like that's totally a propensity here. Um, and with Venus getting closer and closer and closer to Neptune, it's so dreamy, but there's so many ways that us being stuck in our dreams just perpetuates more harm in reality.
Mm, yeah. Oh, that was so beautifully expressed. And having Mars and Venus in Pisces,
Mm.
in general, we're all a little raw. We're all a
Yeah,
little we're porous right now. So things are
yeah,
getting to us. And and then when we compare it, and I think Libra and Pisces both do this probably in different ways. They they go to the ideal. What is the
yes,
ideal possibility here? And we just need to head towards that. And then, and this happened on Thursday. Um, Venus just conjoined Saturn. So I think
hmm
maybe even a couple of days ago into now, we might be experiencing being shown by Saturn, oh, here's your ideal, here's how you would like things to be. Well, here's how things are. What
yep,
is the gap between your ideal and what you have to work with? And a lot of times when
mm
Pisces sees that gap, it's that disillusionment. Then we go heartbreak,
mm
despair,
mhm,
and this is too hard. Um,
yeah,
And so that might be fueling some inactivity. And actually, that's why, a few days ago, I think was especially hard. Before Venus conjoined Saturn, Mars was on the other side. So Venus was in besiegement. She was
yeah,
flanked by,
trapped, yeah,
and, you know, when we're in pain, depending on our tools for dealing with it, our capacity, it can cause us to do behaviors that actually will exacerbate the pain later, like
totally.
not dealing with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
Pisces does the escape hatch thing, right? And I always say, like in client sessions with people with maybe Moon Neptune or like Pisces placements, it's like you need to escape with your emotions, not without them. Because when you escape and you don't take into account how you feel, when you come back, it's just going to be a mess, or it's going to be bigger, it's going to be greater to deal with. So finding ways to actually work with your emotions maybe as you're escaping, like meditation or like taking a walk through nature. I feel like those are ways to like actualize gentle movement of the emotions that are with you while you're also escaping. But yeah, it's this feeling of just like pulling the escape hatch, like I'm just not going to look at it. It's just so on brand for all these Pisces planets, but also for Libra and the allergy to discord, the allergy to conflict that sometimes we need to move through in order to get things going, right? And I think that's so much about the North Node in Aries. Like someone needs to draw a line in the sand. Someone needs to say, I'm going to act on this for things to get going. And it may be sloppy and messy and confused, but at least now we're starting. And I think starting is better than staying still or like wandering or just not doing anything.
Right. Yeah. So maybe some questions to ask yourself, especially with regard to the past few days, while Venus was, kind of being encroached upon with Saturn and
Mm-hmm.
Mars, and this upcoming eclipse is, did you get your bubble burst with something? Are you finding that there's something going on that is just so unpalatable, maybe even, very painful?
Yeah.
Um, are you are you able to somehow take this new information on board and build some kind of relationship with it so you can maybe take an action later? Or
Mhm.
did you stick your head in the sand, look the other way?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what kinds of things, can you do? And Camille mentioned some really nice things to, we're not trying to traumatize ourselves, but also, like, what situations can you cultivate so that it might be a little bit easier to be with
Mm.
some new information that maybe, you
Absolutely.
didn't want, or is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Pisces is good at that. Pisces is an all encompassing sign. Like it can hold all of it. It can hold the human condition. And we do ourselves a disservice by trying to be selective about what parts of the human condition we want to hold, we want to pay attention to. So yeah, that can definitely be an action plan or like a kind of homework, right? How do you sit with things that are difficult, not to the point of dwelling or being sorrowful, which can also be a Pisces thing, but how are you going to let it animate you or let it provoke some kind of change or let it help you kind of turn over a new leaf? Um, Something that also happened like culturally, I think around the time that Venus was with Saturn was we got a documentary about the behind the scenes of like Nickelodeon and all of these kids shows. And it made me kind of reflect upon how Saturn in Pisces is puncturing our collective nostalgia. The things that we look back on and we're like, oh, those were the good old days. Like that was awesome. Like that filled me with so much joy. And Saturn is this reality check that's like, in fact, all of these horrendous things and heinous things were happening behind the scenes that are like kind of now coming to light. And even though that's a cultural example, it could be something that's resonant in our own lives. Like, what dreams or fantasies or states of nostalgia are we so intoxicated by that we refuse
Mm.
to see, the nasty parts of it or the edgy parts of it that are also part of that story. And Pisces has a hard time letting go of a dream because dreams feel good. So yeah, that just reminded me of that, the besiegement there with Venus and how like not everything is as it seems, even though it seems awesome.
No, I like that you used the word intoxicate, because yeah, that's another
Yes.
Pisces. That's
Yeah.
another Pisces type of thing, and I think that's another place where Libra and Pisces get into trouble.
Hmm.
Um, they, yeah, I'm just gonna leave it. They get intoxicated by the ideal
Yeah.
situation, the feeling, being able to connect, right? Because they're both Venus signs. Like, I
Mhm.
don't have to. overthink this. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to let myself like merge with this person, this situation.
Yeah,
And then that can cause some trouble. Um,
it can. It can. So maybe
I'm,
this eclipse is like symbolic sobriety. You get a wake-up call, something becomes very obvious, right? You get the full expanse of the story, and you get to choose whether or not you're going to keep sipping on the nectar or you're going to change your actions and kind of
yeah.
wake up, right, to what is actually happening in your life.
Ooh, and I love what you said. I had some notes about like kind of South Node shadowy Libra stuff that might come up, and I love that you mentioned this approval thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's been coming up a lot for me in consultations, and
Hmm.
just trying to like um, tease tease out this whole approval, self worth like thing going on. But here's I have some stuff. I have
Yeah.
stopped trying to be seen in the best light. I
Mm.
think that's a Libra thing, and then Libra also gets tasked with this, people pleasing thing,
Yeah.
and I don't. And people pleasing is a thing, but I don't like the term because I don't think it's really about pleasing people. When we're people
Totally.
pleasing, and you have these amazing social skills that Libra has, it can actually be a very selfish way
Yep.
to to manipulate a situation, and to oh, what am I trying to say here? You're trying to control the response you get. You're trying to control the feedback you get, and
Yep.
it's actually very, Libra and Aries are two sides of the same coin. And in that way, you stop an actual connection or reflection or exchange because you're not being present as an individual, just sharing who
Hmm.
you are. You know so well what people want and what people need and what will fly, that you give them that. And then
Yep.
you have, boom, you have this thing called harmony. But is it like legit harmony, or is it just this manufactured thing to like, keep greasing the social wheels, just like get keep
Totally.
things moving? And oh yeah, that one's been coming up a lot. I also have outdated ideas about what makes you valuable,
Ah, yeah.
beliefs about mutual support, old beliefs that don't work anymore about mutual support in relationships. I think they're going to get put to the test. And like you said, moving away from seeking approval and moving towards a self-reliant value system, not getting our sense of value from getting the positive response or reflection or approval of somebody else.
Yeah.
um, this has been being having the courage to be unpopular.
Oh yeah, love
um,
that. I
how
put here
much
the courage to be cringe, right? Because Libra is so much about like an ironing out things need to be smooth and perfect and aesthetic. And Aries is like, this is just who I am. It's cringy, it's weird, it's awkward, but I'm being honest. So
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
yeah,
At least you know what you're working with Aries. Sometimes, and this
yeah.
and this is where like I emailed you, and I'm like, I might be biased. I have a hard time with Libra energy. I often feel like, I like, what are you trying to do here? I feel like something
Mm,
else is going
hmm.
on aside from you just sharing with me who you are. You're doing something,
Totally.
and it makes me feel a little just icky because I can't I
Yeah,
can't see explicitly like what are you doing?
yeah,
Um
yeah. And that's
and
also goes back to Pisces and being like manipulating. So there's a double dose there where Pisces is very good at manipulating, especially Mars in Pisces, because it can maneuver. And then you have the South Node Libra, which is like presentation, right? And the kind of result of that manipulation or that
Mm,
maneuvering. Yeah. Yeah.
mm. Oh boy,
And
you just, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say another thing is that this eclipse is trine Pluto. And I know like people hear trines and they're like, oh, this is going to be good. But especially with Pluto trines, what it just gives is like a free conduit. Like that energy is just accessible. It doesn't necessarily mean good or bad. And so I feel like it might be a wake up call in terms of like the obsessive compulsive Libra behaviors that come up around people pleasing or needing to be a certain way, or again, like social manipulation. And Pluto is just like the bubbling of those wounds to the surface, where it's like, ah, I can like see that happening. And then again, it's like it's user's choice how you want to deal with whatever comes up there.
Mm, absolutely, absolutely. Um, yeah, I think people, you know, people who have, anything connecting with this eclipse, especially people who have
Mm.
cardinal signs, I think things are going to come up like you can't straddle the fence anymore.
Ah,
You
good. Yeah, yeah.
you have to you have to build some kind of relationship with your authentic actual desires, and yeah, this like building your own value system. Are you using relationships as like an identity crutch? Like,
Yeah.
are there parts of you that are, just self self-made and self-created, that you can depend on, or are you always going to be needing to get that from feedback?
Mm,
um,
hmm.
and what's something that's come up a lot, especially with people who identify as women during this
Hmm.
time, because all this, and this stuff is out there. But if you identify as a woman, if you're in a woman's body, if you're a man, if you're in everything in between, because we've all been so conditioned by gender and things like that, it
Yes.
it makes things tricky. So I'm noticing a lot of women right now. We've, societally, we've all been conditioned to, like,
Yeah.
do some more of that Libra thing. Don't do so much of that Aries thing.
Yeah.
It brings up these little internal conflicts and
Hmm.
confusion. And
Yeah.
a lot of women I'm hearing a lot of stuff about self-worth, and
Mm.
they're getting mad, and they're like, I know my worth, and because I'm this or that, and I deserve this. I deserve to have my writing published at this publishing house. I deserve that promotion. And when these people wake up to how awesome I am, then
Yeah.
I'll know. And I'm like, actually, that means you don't know how much you're worth. You're still waiting
Mm.
for validation from, like, kind of like these Saturnian institutions and metrics
Yeah.
of, like, well,
Yeah.
now I'm a real artist. Now our relationship is good because I got you to commit to me. It's like, if you really know your self-worth, you you could be writing on cocktail napkins. You're a writer. You're an artist. You could be
Yeah.
making collages at home. You are an artist. You are
Hmm.
worthy of love because you're worthy of love, not because you got someone to. You're still outsourcing your sense of worth on this
Ah,
whole
outsourcing. Yes, yes, yes.
relationship, like, feedback. And so I've been kind of on a mission to really challenge that kind of thinking. And it's with a lot with women who are still thinking if that that someone else has to give them that, and make
Yeah.
them legitimate and validated. And then that to me is just like a lot of Libra. And I have, like, and that's
It
where my, like,
is.
I'm like on a personal mission too, like because that makes me it makes me crazy, and I think it makes it hard for everybody. And so those are
Totally.
some Libra thoughts I had.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
the sun exalted in Aries, it's exalted there because it gives itself permission. It's self-sustaining. It doesn't, again, outsource its shine, right? It's something that is an internal engine that is constantly running, that doesn't really need approval, which is why the sun does so well there. Our self-concept or our hero's journey, right, is unencumbered when Aries, right, is in the picture. And I also just think of like if you step out of this Libra paradigm, if you just decide, I'm going to give myself worth, I'm going to give myself the validation I need, you're kind of doing this unintentional Libra thing where now you're setting an example. And other people can follow that or can lean into that because now they see that it's happening and it's being done. And I think that's the beautiful intersection or the alchemy of Libra with Aries. It's like by being yourself, you are consciously or not giving other people, right, permission to be themselves. And that's the Libra side of things where you're like other people are like brought into the foray because of the actions that you're taking personally. So it's not just a selfish thing. It's like it does generate broadly change for others too. So
absolutely. I'm so glad you said that.
mm,
So if we don't have any more to say about, I mean, I'm sure some more stuff about the Libra eclipse is going to come in, but would you like to move on?
well, one thing I wanted to say is just looking at the good side of this. One thing that Pisces is super good at, just like quick fire here, is surrender, awareness, compassion, and forgiveness. And so maybe as we're moving through whatever difficult things come up during this eclipse and the next eclipses, I do think that these Pisces placements can generate a tremendous amount of, again, softness for the places maybe that we've been aggrieved or the places where we have betrayed ourselves. Pisces gives such this potential to be okay, right, with whatever human condition you happen to be in, and to not like get caught up on like shoulds or woulds or ifs or like, why did this happen, XYZ. There can just be a resounding peace and acceptance. And then you can just move forward, right, into that Aries space and not feel encumbered.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
is, yep. Pisces, Pisces, seeks perfection, not the way Virgo does by like
Mm,
extracting, ooh, this is bad. And I'm gonna take all the bad
yeah.
stuff away and now it's perfect. It's that like radical acceptance and
Yes.
compassion for
Yes.
all, which I think is where all um, healing stems
Yeah.
from. Like you cannot heal from something unless you first just accept that it's present and there,
Yeah.
and like bring it in. And that's,
Yeah.
yeah, very
And I
Pisces.
love radical with Mars entering Pisces, radical forgiveness or radical acceptance, or the courage to forgive. That's hard, especially in this world of like, you did me wrong, you're wrong, I'm right. But there is an act of courage and bravery and just like being, I'm going to let it go. I'm going to let the tides of the water move me to wherever I need to move next and be okay.
Yeah, it's brave to let go, and brave to
Mm-hmm.
trust,
Yeah.
and maybe, yeah, Mars and Pisces can help with some of that.
Yeah,
Yeah, because we need it.
we
um
do.
so so that happened on the 25th, and the next big thing, and yeah, the next big thing is Mercury stations retrograde on April
Yes.
1st
Yes.
at about 27 degrees. And it's going to make contact with Chiron a few times
Hmm.
during that, and Chiron plays a really big role in the upcoming Aries eclipse. And something I thought that was really interesting is when Chiron stations direct, on April 25th, it does so right on the North Node. And the North Node right now
Mm.
is at about 15 degrees. It's going to stay there until about May. And
Yeah.
so I think that Mercury retrograde is also going to keep the Aries eclipse vibes going. I think this eclipse has a lot more. I mean, all eclipses are processes and cycles, but I think we're going to be feeling the disruption and the adjustments for this one for a little longer because it's also
Yeah.
Mercury. And so I
Yeah.
just thought that was interesting. Any thoughts on this Mercury retrograde in Aries?
Yeah, like the typical stuff still stands, right? Dotting your I's, crossing your T's, moving as slowly as you can for a planet that's in Aries. But when I was like meditating on what this could mean symbolically, I got this this feeling of like not you don't have to respond to everything. Not everything has to be a hot take, or you don't have to respond to everyone else's hot take. And silence as power, or silence as like a non-violent way of also making a point. And when you think about how the ruler of Aries is in Pisces, right? Still doing that kind of um, passive, right? Transit through Pisces. But there can be a lot of fruits that can come from being silent, or from stepping back, or from not contributing to the arguments, right? Or retaining your power by not giving it away, right? As like verbal, spewing things. So that was what came to mind with this, especially because it's going to be with Chiron, and how healing is such this internal process. And yeah, I just see it as something that is, of course, working internally, but I also see it in terms of Mercury with like, hold precious thoughts or precious ideas to yourself, or like don't contribute to arguments, right? That's your energy, and protecting your energy is so much Mars and Pisces as well, like putting those boundaries up.
Oh, that's going to be hard, Camille.
I was going to say you
um,
have Mercury in Aries.
um,
Yeah.
and because when Mercury retrogrades, it's not like Mercury is weak or dysfunctional. It's kind of pumped up and magnified. It's
Yeah,
like it's very close to Earth, and
exactly.
the urge. I can already like kind of feel this like bubble, like the urge to give the hot take and
Yeah.
maybe even want to stir the pot. That's like inflammatory expressions and
Mm,
communications and just kind of popping off without, it's like, I, I wasn't thinking about what I was saying. Like that's just like what wanted to come out spontaneously. It's what it was
yeah.
my instinct,
Yeah.
which is, a lot of Aries.
Mm,
And so just, being mindful that in your environment, like around people where we're in this eclipse time and then Mercury's retrograde in Aries, people might be spouting off, and it would
yeah.
be a good time to like check your any reactionary tendencies. Like, okay, they might have
Mm,
just been spouting off, and before you, like you
mm.
said, then get involved. Oh yeah, is that what you think? Well, here's why. And then you start a
Yeah.
whole little
It becomes
fire.
bigger. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. um and even like, there's been so much. I mean, I feel like there's been a lot going on with what the fuck is going on with how we get our information in media for like several years now, like since
Yeah.
like maybe even like 2016 or something. This has been an issue, and I feel like it's at its peak now,
Yeah.
where even some of like the old stuffy like mainstream media, like you got your New York Times, Washington Post, I'm reading it and I'm like, is this really considered journalism, or is this just a lot of like hot takes, opinion
Yep.
pieces, people what is this?
Yeah. Where's
And
the objectivity?
yeah, it's not there. And I
No.
just, and people and I almost feel a little like I'm manipulated, like it's meant
Mm,
to like wrangle something in me.
totally.
And yeah, I had to stop. I had to be mindful about what information I'm taking in, because I was just like
Absolutely.
starting to get
Yeah.
really upset,
And that could be a
anxious.
great, yeah, that's a great Mercury retrograde theme perennially. Like, what information are you taking in? What information are you allowing to inhabit your mental landscapes, and how those things grow and twist and distort and become monsters in and of themselves, right? If you're not focusing on the right things. So yeah, that comes up a lot, especially with Mercury Chiron. Like there's so many trigger points in the information that we are gathering. And so to just be mindful about what you let trigger you. I mean, sometimes things need to be said. And I think that's the wisdom of Mercury and Aries. It's like, I'm just going to say this. I'm going to speak truth to power. Activism is a huge Aries Mercury thing to me. But yeah, just move slow. Be cautious about what you let stir you.
but but then also, like in what you're saying, is contained during this Mercury retrograde, people might finally say, fuck it, I'm just going to say
Yep.
this, and I've needed to say it for a long time. And in that way,
Mhm.
um that's great. People like
It's
actually like,
liberative.
yeah,
Yes.
finding your voice,
Yes.
saying the
Yes.
hard thing. That's really powerful. But as with, all all planets that are opposite each other on an axis, like if
Mhm.
we're looking at Aries, I don't think it's a complete vision unless you're bringing in Libra, and vice
Yes.
versa.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
also understand that, yeah, you have all of this in you, but you are in relationship just by
Yep.
being here on this planet with other
Yeah.
people. And no,
Yeah.
you don't have to hide yourself or make yourself small, but understand that people people our nervous systems,
Mhm.
we're all connected.
Mhm.
And you might unintentionally, cause someone needless upset, and then
Yeah.
have you can't have a good exchange.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of think of, this is like so cliche, but like I saw this on a meme. Like, it's like, speak your truth even if your voice shakes, type of
Yeah.
vibe with Mercury and Aries. And especially
Totally.
if you're not used to it, you might start feeling like I've been repressing or holding this thing back that is so important to me. It comes from me and I need to share it,
Mm.
but I'm
Hmm.
scared. And this Mercury and Aries thing will be like, well, now's the time. It's not going to
Yes.
feel great if you're not in practice. And so you might be anxious and you might be shaking, but like, you need to express.
Absolutely. Yeah. So people have to like have discernment and check their temperature in relationship to how vocal they are. This could be a time where people who are not as vocal find that voice, right? And find that courage to say what needs to be said. Or there can be people who are constantly embroiled in verbal warfare, maybe because of their job or because what they're interested in. And the Mercury retrograde can be helpful in the other direction, right? A period of silencing or a period of keeping it to yourself. And both of those work with, again, the Libra part, right? Because maybe keeping something to yourself will sustain a relationship, but also maybe saying something could sustain that relationship or make it more honest. And so it's just about, you checking in with you. Does this need to be said? When and why? And what are the consequences in terms of the people that are around me hearing it?
Mm, yes. Excellent.
There's also one
Mhm.
last thing I wanted to say about Mercury retrograde, and you kind of talked about this in terms of Mercury being closer to the Earth. And I see retrograde planets as being deeply individuated. And so here we have like a deeply individuated retrograde planet in a deeply individual sign. So I said that this could be a good time or a good chance to come into contact with ideas that clarify your way forward, outside of the box ideas, ideas coming from left field, right? To really play around and, maybe even get messy in terms of what are the thoughts and what are the stories and narratives, right, that can alight a path forward for you that maybe normally you wouldn't have had access to, right? So I love retrograde for that because it allows you to mine from your own internal landscapes and things that may have gone unnoticed before.
Mm, yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Um, and so that happens. And then on the 4th, the sun conjoins the north node. Here we go. It's like we're heading towards that eclipse. But before that happens, Venus enters Aries on April 5th. Any
Yes.
any thoughts about Venus in Aries?
Well, this is a big wake up from whatever that dream was, right? So if you didn't get it during the lunar eclipse in Libra, when Venus enters Aries, I feel like it's like a clarifying, especially because she would have just exited the grasps of Neptune, right? Still in that soupy place. Yeah, so I see Venus in Aries as clarifying our values, taking action on our values, fighting for connection and fighting for intimacy, the bravery and the courage that is required to be close or to be in community with people. I see Venus in Aries as like the warrior bitch, right? She gets shit done. Doesn't really care what other people think, right? If there's a value, if there's something that matters or that'll put your life into greater coherence. When Venus is in Aries, you get a chance to actually act on that rather than, receiving, which is usually
Mhm.
the role of Venus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Venus in Aries is also, you covered a lot. I'm thinking of also what she likes. I think with Venus in Aries, she's willing to roughhouse a bit. She's
Totally.
willing to, challenge you and maybe even create a little discord. And that discord might even be kind of sexy because there's some
That's what I was saying.
friction.
Discord for connection. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, have you seen the movie Poor Things?
Not yet. It's on my list though.
I want to talk about the character in it. I'm gonna see if I can do it without.
No, please. I don't care about spoilers.
Oh, you don't care about
I'll
spoilers?
watch it
Okay.
anyway. No.
Well, so especially, if you can like watch it with this astrological lens. So if
Mm.
you haven't seen Poor Things yet and you don't want any spoilers, just like maybe fast forward a few minutes or just cover your ears or whatever. Um, the main character in Poor Things, Bella Baxter, I she was just such an epitome of Venus in Aries, to the
Mm.
point where, and you might know a little bit about the premise of the movie, but they take her own baby's brain, and put it in her head. So already there's an adult woman with the brain of her own baby, and then she,
Mm.
develops very quickly. But she's a baby. Everything is brand new, and she wants to touch everything. She wants to see everything. She wants to experience everything, try everything, not to achieve some end. She just wants to experience it, touch it, do it, start it. And um, she lives completely by that instinct, just doesn't
Mm.
understand like relationships or anything. It's like, what is that? I'm gonna grab it. Where is that? I'm going, without even just pure instinct. And there's a lot of sex in the movie too, and she just like is just this creature of desire and fulfilling
Ah.
them.
Yeah.
and it was so refreshing. And I know a couple other astrologers who saw it, and they happened to be women, and they just found it so inspiring. Like yeah, I want more of that for myself. Just like, nope, not asking anyone for permission, not, trying to explain their actions and why the actions make sense because they're trying to achieve this or that. I'm just doing it because I want to do it, and
Yeah.
like full on. And so yeah, if anyone had seen the movie and they like kind of needed a character, I really saw that character as Venus and Aries, which
Oh my
I
God. I want to watch it now.
it's so good. Um and how having Venus in Aries might actually make the solar eclipse coming up maybe a little easier to do, because we might have more of a tolerance or a taste
Yeah.
for things that are a little more contentious and cause
Yes.
friction.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. And the beauty of like trying things and not being productive or not having it be part of an outcome is like you just give yourself free reign, right? To just move on instinct. You actually may stumble upon something that you do want to take to the next level or something that you do want to really invest in. But it's that playing around with like, I could do this or this or this that's so necessary, right? In order to let yourself even stumble upon those things that you may want to really, really invest in. So I love that in terms of just like sampling. I love just sampling and tasting and trying. And who knows, you may stumble upon a recipe that you want to replicate over and over and over again because you allowed yourself to try. So I love that. I love that energy.
Well, that's spoken like a true Mars and Gemini, which is something we both share. It's like, I just want to try it because it's different. It's not,
Honestly, yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Camille, are you ready for the big total solar eclipse conjunct Chiron on April
Oof.
8th?
Yeah.
And this is like one of the stunning things. It's a triple conjunction with Chiron, but it's to the arc minute. It's like as exact can be.
Yeah. I see it. 1919.
Holy moly, holy moly. Okay, okay. We've already kind of been leading up to this anyway. So any thoughts again? Total solar
My
eclipse in
thought
Aries.
Yeah, my thought about this is how giving birth to something is painful. That was like the main thing that I thought of. New moons in and of themselves are kind of like seeds, although I wouldn't do any like rituals around this new moon because it's an eclipse. But it's a seeding. It's also in the first sign of the zodiac, which in and of itself is a kind of seeding. And then you have Chiron in the mix, which is speaking to tenderness or pain. And it just reminded me or made me think of the literal pain that is involved with giving birth to something and the sacrifices and the role of vulnerability in terms of creating new life, right, or moving into a new direction. And also sometimes how pain can be a trigger that makes us want to act, right, in a different way or makes us want to move in a different direction. And I feel like Chiron is playing this very clarifying role with this solar eclipse, and yeah, it's itchy and it's tender and it's like soft and like painful. Um, but there's just there's a life that's beginning, and it's beginning in a very painful, maybe messy way, but it's a new life in and of itself still. So there's something to be nourished and protected there, even though it may feel in the moment something that is like really, really tender.
Mm. Oh, that was beautiful, Camille. Yeah,
Thanks.
I'm totally feeling that. Um, I also want to mention that um, this solar eclipse is in the exalted degree of Aries, 19, like, so it just
That's
keeps
crazy.
getting like more and
Yeah.
more intense
Intense.
and held up. I love what you said about birth being painful. I just have a
Mhm.
little note here that says, not all violence is cruel. And
Ah, exactly.
with
Yeah.
with Aries, one of the big things we're always talking about is force.
Mhm.
And sometimes force is very necessary.
Mhm.
um you think of the way Aries moves, it takes all of its energy and like puts just digs down, gets all of it, and then it's usually one big burst or shove, which is what's needed to what was what's needed to like come out of the vagina.
Yeah,
like
the
it
womb, the
it
Pisces womb, and then we come out. Yeah.
it's we don't like just like slide out like we have to, the mom has to push and the
Yeah.
walls contract and try to like push us out there when when a plant like shoots up and you see those first little bits. It's a force. um and sometimes that's needed, and it's like we're in a time of war, we're in a time of
Mm,
genocide. People
mm,
are incorporating force in all kinds of ways, and I just like I'm not a mundane astrologer, that's like not my specialty, but I know that people who do follow astrology are looking at this Aries eclipse, and it's hard not to think about like war and strife, and Aries is the god of war. Yeah, sure.
yes. Yeah.
Conflict, etc. But if we're going back to Aries as trying to like be itself and feel itself, one of the ways it does that is by slamming itself into something that is not itself. And like this is conflict
Mm,
or fighting or violence. But when you push against something that is not you, you get a really clear feeling of who you are. Like that's why sometimes arguments are really good, because they clarify. It's like, no, that is what I'm saying. That is what I mean.
yeah.
I've become clear to myself by butting heads with you.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I'm just thinking of all the ways that force is, and even violence is sometimes necessary to really, like you said, like break into something truly truly new.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
it, we don't always get to slide into things gradually or at our own pace, especially if we're like trying to make a change or birth, like really birth something that has no precedent. And in Aries, like I think of Aries and that Aries, 0 degrees Aries,
Mm,
we have no history. This is brand
mm.
new. and
Yeah.
and the amount of energy that takes and the kind of energy that takes. But of course, it can be incredibly harmful and cruel, but not
Totally.
always.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you said is really evocative when you think of the fact that the ruler of Aries, Mars, is running right into Saturn at that time. And so when you said like running into something that's not yourself or like hitting a boundary or hitting a threshold, that is do or die time. That is when you decide, am I going to walk away from this or am I going to endure and push through? And Saturn conjunct Mars to me is so much about endurance. And when it's in Pisces, maybe even the endurance of a dream or of a hope or of a, again, the ideal. And then the Aries portion of the chart is bringing that forth, right? And it's, again, not easy. And again, in mundane societal ways, I am kind of worried about how it's going to show up globally and politically. But personally, yeah, it's like what happens when a unmovable force, unstoppable force hits an unmovable force? Like what happens like when those energies come together? And I think we get like a whole new brand new third thing from that. And I think that's what the eclipse is bringing us. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up, because yeah, Mars
Yeah.
conjoined Saturn and Pisces on the 10th, which means that
Yeah.
when we have the eclipse on the 8th, Mars will be approaching Saturn. So that's in play. That is definitely in
Yes.
play. And yeah, what happens when you have the immovable object and
Yes.
the unstoppable force? That's a little that's a little nerve-wracking. Um,
Mm.
and also just to give some precedent to that, at the last Libra eclipse on October 14th, that like October was such a dicey time. And one of the things that made
Yeah.
it so crazy was Mars was in a closing square to Saturn
Mm.
during that
Hmm.
October 14th eclipse. And so it's kind of,
Gosh,
here's a turning point
coming back.
in that
Yep.
Mars Saturn story, which
Mm.
yeah. And that's
Yeah.
also, that's what I'm experiencing, honestly, socially. I feel like, trying to not complicate this, but going back to Pisces, where there's a lot of confusion, Mars and Saturn are in
Mm.
Pisces, they're going to do this thing. Um, there's a lot of discord. Everyone has like a really different story of about what's real, a very different
Yes.
ideologies. And like socially, I'm hearing this from a lot of people, and it's in my experience. Like it, when I do talk world events with people, things get very tense very easily, because once you start digging down a few layers, we might see that we're actually living in two different realities. And then there's like, it does feel like a stop, especially if this
Mm.
is a person that you want to continue being social with, because
Yeah.
it could all get very intense and at the same time murky. Like you
Yep.
might have a set of beliefs that you're not really sure what they're based on, but you're feeling strongly about them, and
Mm-hmm.
someone is doing so in the opposite direction, and then it
Mm-hmm.
and so it's
Yeah.
very easy to do the Libra thing, because we don't want to go in, in delve
Yep.
into those things. So I'm kind of saying that, like, socially, mon- on a on the mundane, on the world
Mm.
stage, yeah, that's troubling. Um, but as far as a personal experience, it might be a place where, you do get a reality check, another wonderful reality check about, where you've been putting your energy, and like,
Yeah.
yeah, what if you've been putting your energy behind? You might need to change it or shift it or alter it somehow.
Yeah,
um
absolutely. And I see the combo of Mars with Saturn as a crystallization, like something shows up in your material reality in some way that, is either antithetical or plays into whatever dream or whatever reality you have. And so, yeah, it's kind of like a come to Jesus moment when Mars runs into Saturn. And it's like, what's the passcode in order to make it through? And there has to be like an adjustment or an acknowledgement, right, of the reality in the worlds that you have been building. And like, if you want to move forward with that, or if it's like time to demolish those things. So it can be a precarious time, but ultimately one that is enlightening. Yeah. I put
wow.
here Mars conjunct Saturn in Pisces, pain that arises in order to reinvigorate a relationship to healing, or even like a seeding of spiritual systems or spiritual structures, Saturn, that can withstand gale force emotional winds. So there
Whoa.
is a strengthening with Mars and Saturn coming together that can be used for support, right? But there's also this feeling of like something that calcifies may actually not be the best, or, moving in a good direction. And I think that's more globally what we may be seeing.
mm, mm-hmm. Yeah. I like that. Yeah, the calcifying or the like the material manifestation
Yep.
of all of our actions, which like
Yep.
come to Jesus moment. It's there's a
Yeah.
culmination in there and a seeding. Um and I think I just don't think there's any way around that. I think that's very difficult. And I'm actually trying to think like, okay, this could show like Mars Saturn conjunctions are things that endure. So
Yep.
hopefully when those two come together, if you've really been working on something for a long time, um,
Mm.
you'll get some kind of confirmation that yes, this is a durable thing. This has some longevity.
Yeah.
So
It's
there's
like Saturn
there's
is giving permission to the actions of Mars. And then if you get that confirmation, this new moon solar eclipse can be like, bam, I'm moving forward in that direction, right? That becomes something that's now actually viable.
yeah.
But the opposite is also true, right? Mars running into Saturn could be like a path that you once walked is now closed or blocked. And then the solar eclipse has to be about, again, that new beginning or whatever the new birth that is going to come after what may needs to end, what may has, or whatever, what needs to end with Mars and Saturn coming together.
I like that. We'll we'll yeah, leave it, yeah, that solar eclipse at
Yeah.
that. And then we have, to finish out Aries season, we have a Mercury Kazemi on the
Mhm.
11th. So yeah, we're getting all kinds of information. I'm thinking like this is going to change a lot of minds this particular time. Um,
Yeah.
it's incredibly like kind of noisy and chatty as far as all the rhetoric around like what is going on. And then Venus
Yeah.
conjoins the North Node, and then we're kicking up that eclipse energy again on the 17th. And if you have time, Camille, I might go to some of these, or I will, if you have time, go to some of these
Yeah.
audience questions, unless you have,
Let's do it.
do you have any like last words of wisdom about
I
what's going
yeah,
on?
I feel like when we get to the Mercury Cazimi, just kind of rounding out where we started about how Pisces is so confusing and Pisces, there could be a lack of clarity. I feel like the Mercury Cazimi, even though it's retrograde, is a period of clarity along this greater story that's happening between these signs. So I would like circle the calendar for, April 11th and check in with yourself about like what has been figured out. What idea or what path now seems clear or intuitive or instinctual that didn't feel that way at the beginning, right, of this eclipse season. So I see that as like, again, Mercury in the heart of the sun. There's like a refreshing and like a rebirth, and it's in this very straightforward sign of Aries. I do think there's a story of clarity that can come in there. So I personally look
Absolutely.
forward to that.
Yes, and that's just like one day after Mars conjoins
Yes.
Saturn. And
Yeah.
just, as with all Kazimis, it's like on the day. So like
Yep.
on April 11th, there's like it's like someone like gets some Windex and cleans the window, and you're like,
Yes.
oh,
You can see clearly now. Yeah.
like
I
on
thought that was
that day.
that, but now it's this. Yeah.
But in the days surrounding that Mercury Kazemi, it might still be foggy. Um, and
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
also, when Mercury is combust, the sun, when it's very close to the
Hmm.
sun, but not in the heart, there
Hmm.
are it kind of points to maybe some conversations or some communications or ideas that are not ready to be exposed
Mm.
yet because
Yeah.
we can't see
We
Mercury.
can't see it. Yeah.
And so yeah, if possible, if you can take a pause
Yeah.
before, or just watch the jumping to conclusions or conflating an idea with like having to do something about it right away. Like
Yeah.
you
And that's
can
hard for
take
Aries.
it's hard. You can take action, but if possible during this time, just hold on.
Take it
And
easy. Yeah. Move with some grace now that Venus is in the sign. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yes, Venus will, I think, help some of this process.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But we still have some more eclipse stuff. If y'all are still with us and wanting some more like context for this eclipse,
Mhm.
we have a question here. If you're going to be talking about eclipses, it seems like an appropriate time to touch on the whole fate, free will, determinism conversation. I feel like so often astrology gets forced into one of these labels, fate, free will, or determinism. Where does astrology fit into that conversation, or does it? And this is a great question for eclipse time, like specifically. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Um, on fate versus free will, well, let me just put it this way. Let me just paint a picture. I feel like in life we are dealt certain cards, and that's our deck. Like we can't change out the cards. We can't ask for a new hand. But the way that we play it is totally up to us. So I feel like we have the materials that we're going to have or the blueprint that we're going to have, but how we choose to build it or not build it or destroy it or whatever is up to us. So I feel like there's a marriage of I don't want to say determinism, but I feel like, I feel like our souls are here to complete something. And I feel like the way that it is completed is kind of up to us. And the eclipses are, I put here, like a hastening of events on the earthly plane that are meant to put you in alignment with the intention of the cosmic plane, right? So there's a higher intention for you, a higher intention for your life. And these eclipses become like course corrections. And in the middle of the eclipse or as the eclipse is happening, it's very destabilizing. Like our story is subject to this major plot twist. But what happens is now that you've been moved or adjusted to this place where you are, quote unquote, supposed to be, according to like as above, so below, your potential is made much more exponential, or your promise is made much more exponential because you aren't going down this path that has nothing to do for you anymore, right? You're on this new place. Um, I don't know if that answers the question at all, but that's kind of how I feel. Like we do have a hand, we do have these things that we cannot change about our experience or who we are, but we have a tremendous amount of freedom to do with that what we want.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm in agreement. And um, something you just touched on a few minutes ago. You were saying, well, like I wouldn't do any like specific ritual or intention during an eclipse. Is
Yeah.
like eclipses, and I also think retrogrades are times for listening. The
Mm-hmm.
the moon's nodes, which is what makes our eclipses, they move in what we call retrograde. um, and and for those of you who are a little deeper into astrology, you might recognize that as primary motion, that going backwards, quote unquote backwards.
Yeah.
And when we get a planet going retrograde, it's going into that primary motion. And some astrologers talk about that backward motion as like God time. Like that's the cosmic clock that is
Mm-hmm.
that is bigger than you, that is like the intelligence of nature, the intelligence of the cosmos working when we're in that backward motion.
Yeah.
And then when
I love
we're
that.
quote unquote direct, that secondary motion, and the planets are like moving forwards, that's when the planets are expressing themselves and individuating from like the hand of quote unquote God, whatever you
Yeah.
think God is. So when we get retrogrades, we're having a retrograde and an eclipse. That's
Mm-hmm.
when you let nature do its thing, you surrender, you listen. Like what is going on in my environment?
Mm.
I want some input on what's going on before I start, like exerting my will on life and
Totally.
exerting my will on situations, which we can do. We have free will, but it's again relationship. Um, but that being said, for those of you who are getting like you're like, I'm gonna set my intentions on this new moon. It's like, whoa, whoa, it's it's not listening to you right now.
It's not your attention right now. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's why eclipses are so humbling because we are forced to account for a greater intelligence. And honestly, in my point of view, like I want to be in alignment with that intelligence because it's bigger than my human mind and it has far more perspective going back and through time. But yeah, if you are very much precious about your own personal will and your own personal desires, eclipses, I feel, are these difficult times of like, boop, that didn't work out. So the more that you can like be released, and I like what you said, just open to listening, I feel like the easier these eclipses might be. And usually when you're listening, and I find this to be true, so that's all the time. Like usually the adjustments that the eclipses put us on or the changes that we make or the changes that we kind of already knew that were coming or the things that we are kind of already had a suspicion about, like a relationship ends or you get fired. Like in our heart of hearts, we can intuit that we weren't supposed to be in that relationship or supposed to be at that job. But yeah, I love what you said about just listening and like taking note of what is happening around you and letting that greater intelligence really, really absorb into your life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah, eclipses and retrogrades. Like when planets go retrograde, that's when we get the Freudian slips or the oops, that
Yeah.
was an accident or was it an accident?
Oh, was it
Like
really? Yeah.
yeah, it's time to listen. And for those of you who are
Mm.
like, well, Jesus, like what how long is this eclipse season, gonna last? We have a full moon in Scorpio on April 23rd. And usually, once we have our first lunation, that is not an eclipse. We're
Yeah.
kind of out of the eclipse zone, but the eclipse process is still there. Um,
Yeah.
like you
It's
might
like 6 months, right? Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
6 months to a year, especially with the
Mhm.
solar eclipse. Sure, something might happen like on the day, but also something might happen that you don't think is a big deal. And then 6 months
Yeah.
to a
Yeah.
year later, you look back and like, oh, that was the beginning of this whole big change that like I
Yeah. That
experienced
occurred.
later. Okay. And so that's why, again, just paying attention, see, did anything just a little odd happen? A little new thing was
Mm-hmm.
introduced or something, a new thing left. Like
Mm-hmm.
just, paying attention.
Yeah, I think
And
synchronicities get louder around eclipse season too, I believe. So the more that you're kind of tapped into like the little notes and the clues that the universe is leaving behind, I think the more aware of, what the eclipse is doing in your life, I think. Yeah.
absolutely. And then I have one for you. This is another question. Last year we had Taurus and Scorpio eclipses, which were ruled by Venus and Mars, and we have more Venus and Mars eclipses coming this year. But Aries/Libra, do either of you have anything to comment on or say about that?
Yeah, I do. Um, so the difference is that Aries and Libra are the diurnal expressions of Venus and Mars, and Taurus and Scorpio are the nocturnal expressions of Venus and Mars. And I believe that the Scorpio Taurus eclipses were more about adjustments internally, um, like checking where you're resourced or checking, Taurus, what your values are, what actually matters to you. With Scorpio, right, checking in on the psychological or emotional complexes that accompany you through life. And those are internal facing signs as well. And so with this Aries Libra eclipse, and again, all of life is just a continuation, right? This is not happening in a vacuum. It's kind of picking up where those other eclipses left off. But I think this is more so about conscious realizations, moving forward, taking external actions or changes happening external to you versus, Scorpio, Taurus, which may have been, depending on the houses, I suppose, too, more of this internal process of change or acceleration. So that's like my main insight there in terms of the differences. It's like Venus and Libra are expressing themselves much differently in their diurnal signs versus their nocturnal signs.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful, yeah, beautiful coverage of that. We are coming up upon 2 hours, and I know that this question is from Mandy, which is a good. Mandy helps us
Mandy.
so much with all our logistics and everything like that. If you had to choose a song, a movie, piece of artwork, or poem, or book, or any type of art or media to recommend during these eclipses, what would you recommend?
Oh my God. Um, the first thing that comes to mind, I'm going to take it because I trust the wisdom of intuition. Pisces and eclipse season, like just everything we've talked about so far, reminds me of like listening to binaural beats or like, frequencies. So there's no lyrics, there's like, no one singing, but it's just music and it's frequency based music, and you can listen to ones that make you happy or make you calm or make you focused. And I feel like that is what's coming to mind in terms of like music or media that you could be using to help you move through this, because it's music that I think gets you in alignment with the frequencies that are happening around you, and that allows you to then check in with how those frequencies are showing up like within you. So that was the first thing that came to mind. I listen to those things a lot. Like when I need to focus or go to sleep, like I really
Mm,
believe in the power of like certain beta waves or certain
mm.
frequencies to like help change or elucidate or illuminate. So that's what came to mind. And then I guess also Poor Things. That's going to be my eclipse viewing as well,
It's
right?
so Aries.
The babiness. Yeah, yeah,
It's so Aries, and it's really really good.
yeah.
Um, I I have a I have a book that I haven't read all the way, but I've read a few chapters, and it's Bell Hook's book, and it's called The Will to
Mm,
Change. And
mm,
it's her book that focuses on masculine energy and the masculine principle, and then to bring in
yeah.
Chiron, um, how all of us, again, men, women, anywhere in between, we're all kind of I don't have an eloquent way to say this. We're all a little fucked up around masculine
Yeah.
energy. Like
Mm,
a lot of the ways that we've been, you know, culturally conditioned to be in relationship with the masculine has done a disservice to men and women and everybody.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and that masculine energy is not bad. The masculine principle is not bad, and we all have it no matter what kind of body you're in. But because of the way it's either been like hyped up and worshiped and exalted or shamed,
Mm,
we have a very complicated relationship with these Aries types of things, whether we
yeah.
worship at the altar of conquest and winning and competition, or we think that those things are bad and we shouldn't have any of those things.
Mm,
It's like messed us up as a people, I think.
yeah.
And the few chapters that I've read were really, really powerful, so smart. Um,
Mm.
and so I would recommend that. And I should actually maybe finish that. And if you have the opportunity, there's a lot of energy. See, there's a lot of energy moving through. Anything you
Yeah.
can do, Aries, to discharge the energy, like with your body. And because we have all of
Oh,
this
that's good.
Pisces
That's
underneath,
good. Yeah.
I'm thinking dancing. Whether you think you're,
Movement. It's
yeah,
so good. Yeah.
whether you think of yourself as a dancer or not, whether you think you're good or not, um, getting some of this move, getting some of this like feeling and energy and like off gassing it, discharging it through your body might help you be able to be a little more still and
Yeah.
not have your mind maybe be so agitated, which I think is a definite possibility with Mercury retrograde in Aries. Like
Yeah.
just too much going on internally. I think specifically dance too, because of the Pisces stuff going on, like feeling your body as fluid and
Mm.
enjoying the feeling in your body, because the mind, I think, is going to be really working and maybe a little
Yeah.
too hard.
Yeah. We're a mind-based society too. Like we glorify intelligence and mental processes. When you said that about masculinity, it also made me think about our distorted relationship to anger, which may be like a branch of the tree of masculinity or action. And movement is so integral for anger. And like anger might be a theme, right? That comes up with some of this Aries that's moving through us at this portion of the year. So, dancing is good, but it also made me think I have Mars in the first house of like punching a pillow or screaming or destroying things in a way that's like sacred and helpful because you're, again, discharging energy, getting it out of your body and feeling then at the end of that a Piscean release or like a peace that comes through you because you got it out.
I love that. Yeah, like
Yeah.
so punching punch some
Yeah.
pillows, or go to a martial arts class, learn how to channel
hmm
that
hmm
sometimes too muchness of Aries, or the excessive heat of Aries, like
Yes.
focusing it, and then like feel the peace.
Yeah, that comes right after that, right? The
Yeah.
catharsis, which is the Pisces portion. Yeah.
Yeah, try to rest. Sometimes eclipses
Mm.
really take it out of people.
hmm
Um, Try to find time to rest if at all
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. And you made me
Um,
think of like hydrating because you said, yeah, it is a hot time, right? So hydrating, getting literal lubrication into your body. It could also just be helpful in a supplementary way.
yeah. Well, Camille, I think we did it. I think
Yay!
I think we covered a lot. I think
Yes.
we found a lot of angles and contexts. Do you have any things coming up? Any things on offer now or in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always offering readings. I think I'm booked through May, but so June, July, maybe the end of May, feel free to like hop onto my books. My main kind of contribution to the astrology community right now, it's coming through just content creation. So I'm always just thinking of things to say on Instagram or Twitter. They're not necessarily always topical. Like I like dealing with like the evergreen topics. But yeah, I'm always just kind of shooting out my ideas, Mars and Gemini kind of without a plan or without coherence, but I've learned to love that about me. So people can tune into that. And as you said, my little monologues as well. I love chatting on social media. But yeah, you can go to CamilleMichelleGray.com, see what I'm up to, see who I am, the offerings that I have there. And yeah, I would love to get in touch with anyone who listened to this. It's a profound honor to be here and to be able to speak about these things that I love so much.
Oh, thank you, Camille.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was
Yeah.
good. I feel good, I think, about
Yeah.
heading into this eclipse season. So
Yeah.
I think this was necessary for us too, like in the process of like trying to get your head around it and encapsulating
Totally.
it. It's like, okay, that's like some eclipse work, just like trying to
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
well, thank you so much. And all of Camille's information will be in the show notes if you would like to get a hold of her. And so will
Yeah.
my information. And having said all that, I wish you a really awesome. I wish you,
Yeah.
I wish you an eclipse season that brings you whatever you need. And I hope,
Yes, what you need. Not maybe what
yeah,
you want, but what you need. And I still look forward to the episode you do next month because I want to see how this all landed for you. See what actually
cool.
happened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
deal. All right, everybody. Well, have an eclipse season. I just feel like it's like have a nice eclipse season. That feels very Libra. Um, I hope it works it works for you in a way that you need. And
Mhm.
I will see you next time. And that is all. Signing off.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.